you need some quarterback help, here's a few quarterbacks you could add on waivers heading into Week 13. The first guy's Kirk Cousins. I sound like a broken record about Cousins. I've recommended him now. I believe this is the third week in a row on waivers. But this guy, he's getting the job done, and he's not owned in enough fantasy leagues. He's still available, Cousins, in a whopping 60% of fantasy leagues. Another 30-point fantasy game for him. He finished with 31, 307 yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 4 rushes, 19 rushing yards, and 2-point conversion and a fumble loss, even without his #1 receiver in this ball game versus a middle-of-the-pack Carolina Panther defense. Kirk Cousins, he got the job done. He hit Justin Jefferson for 2 touchdowns. We even saw Dalvin Cook leave this ball game for a little with the injury. So Kirk Cousins, he's finding ways. He's taking advantage of the coverage, and now he's got a cupcake matchup in Week 13 versus the Jacksonville Jaguars that give up the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. And I'm going to expect Cousins to keep rolling in this one and get 25 to 30 fantasy points. So you should go out there and get him, especially with a couple injuries at the position and a guy like Tom Brady on the bye week this week. So go get Kirk Cousins. The second guy is another guy who's been on this list for weeks now, is Phillip Rivers of the Indianapolis Colts, and another solid game for Rivers. 295 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and an into for 21.5 fantasy points. I know his team got blown out early and often, and they were playing back and letting Rivers throw. But now Rivers with 4 games in a row with 20 or more fantasy points. And this is the type of production you like to see. Next week he's got a good matchup versus Houston, who can't stop nobody on defense as well. So Phillip Rivers, he's a good start, and he's a good play here. The third guy is Ryan Fitzpatrick of the Miami Dolphins. This is pending if Tua is going to miss this ball game or not with a thumb injury. But anyway, Fitzpatrick, he looked good. He had a good matchup versus the Jets, and he had a good game. 23 fantasy points, 257 yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and 3 rushing attempts for 10 yards. He's available in 80% of leagues, and if he does play, he versus a weak Cincinnati Bengal defense next week in Miami in Week 13. So, yeah, like I said, even Fitzpatrick or Tua, whichever one's going to start, I'm going to pick up either of them with that great matchup versus Cincinnati in Week 13. They can't stop no one. They give up the 11th most amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks, and these guys are great starts, especially in 2 quarterback leagues. And the fourth guy I'm going to look to pick up a quarterback this week is Jalen Hurts of the Philadelphia Eagles. There's rumblings here. This video is recorded before the Monday night game, obviously, that Jalen Hurts, he got snaps with the first team, and he's going to be playing more versus Seattle. And I think this guy, he's going to take over as the starter if Carson Wentz comes out with another stinker in this ball game on Monday Night Football. And I think the time's now for Hurts. They're still in the division hunt, and it'll be a feel-good story. I know they paid Wentz a $100 million contract, but if he's not getting the job done, which he's not, he's looked horrible. The Eagles, they're in a bad division, and they can't get it done. And Hurts, this guy, he's a dual threat. He could run, he could throw the football. And like I said, if he's going to take over, he's got a great matchup versus Seattle this week. So you stash him now. And next week he goes to Green Bay. I know that'll be a tougher game, but that's a team I feel like you can have a decent ball game in the air versus is Green Bay. So we'll see what happens with Hurts. We'll see if he's going to start. And that's a few quarterbacks I'm looking at on waivers. Very thin this week, heading into Week 13.